Um, I would like to first introduce myself. My name is Cecile Babick-Morrow, and I have the pleasure of working with the Pvcc Alumni program here. And I also work in the area of development, which the primary focus is raising financial resources to support student scholarships so that we can help students pursue their educational goals and dreams. So that's my role here. And I'd like to extend a hearty welcome to our 4 panelists. I believe they'll be sharing a brief introduction, but we have Ashley and Nicole and Gustavo and Rochelle, and they are here to share a little bit about their perspectives and experiences as they were PVC students. And now those of you that are joined us that are currently PVC students are following in their footsteps. So they have lots of really wonderful words of wisdom to share with us this evening, or this afternoon, I guess. It's late afternoon. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to the panel facilitator. I do want to encourage those of you who are listening and aren't speaking to mute your mic so that we don't get any feedback, and therefore we'll be able to hear everyone's comments and perspectives very clearly. And please put any questions that you have in the chat, and Marianne and Jack will also help, and I think Chris said they would too, to share those comments through the chat with all of us today. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Marianne Rocaforte Gardner, Pvcc faculty, and she'll provide you with a brief introduction and then move on to our candidates, or our panelists, I should say. All right, take it away, Marianne.
Thank you so much, and it's wonderful to be here among so many bright faces and creative people. And I'm Marianne. I am one of the counselors at Pvcc, and I'm in an adjunct role now, having had a wonderful career full-time. And so I'm really delighted to be connected to the fine and performing arts. And my role today will simply be to help facilitate a great discussion. We have 4 Pvcc alumni. We have Ashley, Gustavo, Rochelle, and Nicole. And I'm not sure I necessarily mentioned them in the original order, alphabetical order, but if you could please tell us each about yourselves. We'll start with Ashley. And if you could just tell us a little bit about what you have studied, what you currently do, and any other introductory information you'd like to share. We'll start with Ashley.
Hi, everyone. I hope you're doing well this afternoon. My name is Ashley David Watkins. I studied dance at Paradise Valley Community College. I did graduate with my associate's degree there, and then I transferred to Arizona State over in Tempe to get my bachelor's degree in dance education. I've taught in high school for almost 11 years as a dance instructor. But I also help out with promotion with the Pvcc dance program. And I also, I don't know if this is, illegal, but I also teach over at Glendale Community College. I teach dance production. So I actually was lucky enough to be trained in production, technical theater, such as lighting design, sound, stage management, those types of things. So I was kind of cross-trained in a couple of the things that I was really lucky to be a part of, and actually I've used those skills every single year since I learned them. So that's a little bit about myself and my career so far. Still working on it, still growing.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Gustavo, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, hello. My name is Gustavo Flores. I attended Pvcc, and after graduating Pvcc, I did take a year off to try to work with a couple of different theater companies around the valley, and then I attended Grand Canyon University and worked with a couple of different companies from there on out. And currently, I'm a member of the Southwest Shakespeare Company's core company members, and that's where I'm at right now.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Our next panelist is Rochelle.
Hello, my name is Rochelle Dart. I'm a theater artist and educator. I went to Pvcc and then transferred to ASU. And then after that, I spent about a year abroad studying storytelling with Liz Weir and apprenticing with her. And then when I came back, I worked freelance for about a year. And then during the pandemic, I started to work for the PVUSD as a theater teacher, teaching middle school theater, and absolutely fell in love with it. And so that's where I am today. I teach full time at Shea Middle School. And then I also push into the elementary school, Desert Cove, and do arts integration. So we look at how can we do science and explore it through theater. And I still work in the Valley as an actor and also as a fight choreographer. So anytime you see a fight, should be choreographed, so that way it's safe for the actors and everyone involved. And that's what I love to do.
Great, great. Thank you very much. And finally, we have Nicole.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nicole Collingwood. I originally went to PVCC and got my certificate in creative writing and transferred over to ASU, got my bachelor's in creative writing, and I'm a little bit behind everyone. I'm working on getting my MFA now, or I've just applied to get my MFA now, so I'm waiting to hear back from schools, so I'm a little bit behind, but I've worked in literary magazine publishing, and I've worked as a reader for writing competitions, and right now I'm just working freelance with editing. So that's it.
That's great. And you know, you said a word behind, and I sometimes hear people say that, and the truth is that all the experiences that you're undergoing and gaining are valuable and will be used. It all gets used. And so you may be behind somebody else, but you may also be ahead of someone else in the other kinds of experiences you gain. And that's true of all of us. That's what makes it rich. So let's begin with our first question. And our first question I'm going to pose to both Ashley and Gustavo. So one of you can start. And here's the question. Was there a key moment in time that influenced you in your career path? And if so, please tell us about it.
Actually, you can go ahead.
Okay. Well, I think as a dancer, I knew very early on that was what I wanted to do. I remember I have two older sisters, and I just remember watching through the studio window, watching them perform or dance, and I turned to my mom and I told her, I was like, this is what I want to do. And I was really young. I want to say I was 4 or 5 years old, and then not too long after, my mom enrolled me in dance classes. But at PVCC specifically, I actually was originally a medical major. I was planning on becoming a nurse, but I took dance classes on the side because I loved it so much. And PVCC actually kind of gave me the courage to change my major to my passion, which really was dance and the performing arts. So it's a really strong program, and I feel like the instructors really facilitate that process. So I finally made the leap.
Good for you. Are you glad you did?
Of course, I'm glad I did.
Good to hear. Gustavo, what about you? Was there a key moment in time that influenced you in your career path?
Definitely. I'm similar to Ashley. It was a point like really early on. Back in high school, at first I didn't want to do theater because I'm like, oh, I don't think it's for me. I just kind of do funny voices just for fun. I just kind of tell jokes for fun. And then one of my professors, my teachers, my language arts teacher said, hey, you should go ahead and just go for it, make that leap. So that got me started going. And then specifically at Paradise Valley Community College, it was the amount of classes that they had that were so different. They had the stage combat classes at PVCC. They had script writing class. They had technical theater classes. And the fact that I got to take so many of them was like really influential. Being able to be like, oh, there's like so much that I can do to get into this. There's a lot of different places that I can stretch and like hone and harness the power that you get to have as an artist.
How important it is for someone to say, go for it, huh?
Mm.
How far that takes you. A simple message like that. Thank you. And Rochelle and Nicole, I have a different question for you guys. So what advice would you like to share for current students interested in the visual and performing arts related professions?
I would say to not solely rely on your talent and bettering your craft. Because I've found, I mean, I used to be under the impression that if I practice writing and, listen to my professors and my peers and their advice for what to do better, that would be enough. But I've found that taking the opportunities that don't necessarily have to do directly with my writing have offered me so much more than just working on it independently and working on it alone. Like a lot of it is collaboration, even though writing is somewhat thought of as a solitary kind of activity to do. I just, the opportunities that I have taken advantage of have gotten my resume to be so much better, and my resume has been way more helpful than just relying on my writing alone.
Oh, excellent. Thank you so much. Rochelle, how would you answer that? What advice would you like to share for current students?
Yeah, I think I have two main pieces, and one comes from one of my professors, Bonnie Eckert, and she would say, "When a door opens, walk through it." And I think having a career in the arts and being a creative, there's a lot of ebb and flow. And sometimes you have a lot of opportunities and sometimes there's not many. And sometimes such different opportunities come up. Maybe someone invites you to perform or write for a conference or submit your art into something. But if there is a door that opens, walk through it. You don't know like what's on the other side and you don't know what other doors that might lead to. So I think that's like really important. And then the other piece of advice actually comes from the Marines, and it is that under pressure, we do not rise to the occasion, we sink to our level of training. And so train hard. I think that a lot of times we think about art as being just like something that comes naturally, but actually as artists, there's a lot of rigor in what we do. And so, and this is especially true, I'm sure for all the arts, but if you're a performance artist, train your voice, take workshops. If you're not working on a show, go and get a coach. Anything that you can do to train and work your craft, that is going to support you in those moments when you're on stage, in those moments where you have an important audition. And if you're not training, you're not supporting yourself. And I think it's really important to put that training into your practice as an artist.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you. And that the piece that I'm hearing now more than once, the thing about someone's going to invite you to something, take advantage of opportunities, collaborate, do what's outside of your area in addition to training in your area, that goes under the category of you never know. And when people tell their stories, it's never a straight line. So we're going to go back to Ashley and Gustavo now with our second question. There are many different career paths in the visual and performing arts related professions. How would you advise students on how to choose their path or paths?
Did you want to go first this time, Gustavo?
Yeah, sure thing. I think you kind of hit it on the nose just now, Marianne, when you said just taking advantage of as many things as you can. Because like we've all mentioned so far, there's a lot that can go into a career in the arts. And especially when you're in college and there's a lot of classes available, in order to figure out where you want to go or what specifically it is you think you might want to do as an artist in the career is you really have to go out and find out what there is to do career-wise in the arts. So, and luckily there's a lot that's available, especially here in the Valley as well. There's plenty of people to talk to. There's plenty of opportunities, class-wise, like real world-wise, that you can kind of stretch your limbs and say, well, this is pretty cool. Maybe it's not for me, but I'll keep working at it. Or maybe something that'll jump out at you and say, ooh, you know what? This is really, really good, and I want to work even harder at it to see where it leads me. And then just maybe even talking to people saying, hey, from an outside third party perspective, what's something that you see me like that I might not see in myself so far, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. Ashley, what advice would you give students on how to choose their path or paths?
Kind of a similar thing to what Rochelle said. I feel like it's really important to diversify yourself, especially as, I mean, I can't speak for the other art forms, but I feel like it's similar in the sense of it's if you want to be a performing type of artist, that's fantastic. Do the things that you want to do as far as performing is concerned. However, as a dancer, I found it really valuable to also, get those skills in teaching and education because it kind of helps support my habit of wanting to perform, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
I also feel like it's important if you want to relate to your students to be a performer as well. So it kind of goes back and forth. For a while, my students would get fatigued and be like, why are you so tired? And then, I actually went back to performing and I kind of understood. I had a little bit more humility for, both aspects.
Mhm.
Um, I also feel like you can sustain your career a lot longer if you diversify yourself. And once again, if someone gives you an opportunity, take it if it's possible. Do what's right for you, but you never know how and when you're going to use that skill. Like technical theater, I ended up absolutely loving it. I didn't think I would, but it was one of those things that I just ended up falling into, and I absolutely love it. So diversify.
Great. That makes me wonder, and we're going to save this question because it's not an official question yet, but your biggest surprise in your field. So just kind of keep that in mind for later, just because I hear a lot of people say, oh my gosh, I had no idea that technical theater was like this or whatever it may be. So kind of keep in mind the question of biggest surprise. But right now we're going to move over to Rochelle and Nicole. And I want to ask you guys, is there anything you would have done differently on your educational journey?
So I was reflecting on this question, and I think the one thing that I would have done differently, uh, and maybe not, because like every decision that I made led me right here, and I really am enjoying the space that I'm in right now. But I think that one thing I would have done differently is to look at professional opportunities earlier on in my educational career. So it's something that I did like my senior year of college. I was working a lot of professional gigs, but I didn't start doing that till my senior year of college. And I wish I like earlier on would have even just auditioned, auditioned for a community theater, auditioned for professional theater, or started having conversations with people who are working professionally in the industry earlier on in my career. And one of the reasons that I didn't was because I was afraid of being imperfect. So I was like, oh no, I can't do it yet. I have to get perfect, but I'm not perfect now. And so just knowing that like, however you are right now, like you are in a place where you can go and have conversations. So maybe you audition and you don't get the gig, but you were in that room and you were meeting people. So just like, do it now. And you don't know, maybe you audition and you're the right person for that role or that gig.
Wonderful, thank you. Nicole, how would you answer that? What would you have done differently on your educational journey?
I I don't want to keep circling back to the opportunity thing, but I think just mostly taking the opportunities that I let pass me by because I was too afraid of doing something that I wasn't used to. I wish that I had taken more opportunities to get teaching experience. I know Ashley talked about teaching experience and how that's been very helpful for actually working and funding kind of like your passion with, well, my passion would be writing, but funding your passion through teaching. And I mean, I've just applied to MFAs, and my ultimate goal is to become a professor in creative writing. So having taken advantage of those opportunities would have been really beneficial for applying and eventually getting where I want to be.
Okay, thank you. That leads me to remember hearing people say, well, I don't want to sell out. You know, I'm preparing to be a dancer, I'm preparing to be a painter, or whatever the art form is. And gosh, if I develop a secondary skill, I'm going to be not able to spend all my time doing what I love. Nicole, since you brought it up, could you maybe address that?
I mean, yeah, when I first started pursuing writing academically, I was under the impression that I would be writing and that would be my sole source of income. But, you know, going to school for writing, it really showed me that most people don't just write and make enough money to live and sustain their lifestyles. You have to kind of find the balance between working in the field and giving yourself enough time to do what you really want to be doing on the side and still find inspiration in what you're doing to make money more or less, while kind of finding that balance between both.
Thank you. If anyone else wants to weigh in on that question, it looks like Rochelle.
I'll just add one thing. I think sometimes we call them survival jobs. Like, this is like your survival job. And one of my friends, he actually changed it, and he said it's actually like your, oh shoot, it was like in my head and then it went right out. When you have, like, it's, instead of looking at it like, oh, I have to do this, I can't just do my art, you look at it like, this is what I'm doing so I can do my art. Kind of like what Nicole said. So it's like, yeah, I'm doing this, but I'm going to do it as I do it as an artist, right? You have your values as an artist, so you can apply that to any job that you have. So like, if you're an artist, like, it's important to you, like, maybe like struggling, and you find a lot of like creative inspiration from the struggle. Like, find that in your other work. Where do you struggle? Like, and where can you find like inspiration in that? Or like maybe like connecting to people, and like that gives you your inspiration to write. So then look for that connection in your other work. I think like it can be helpful to, instead of look at it like, oh, what a downer, like I have to make money. It can be like, oh, how can I use this to actually like fuel who I am as an artist?
Yeah, you really pinpointed that idea of the heart of who we are. We bring that to everything we do anyway. So if you recognize your top 5 career-related values even, you can bring those into any of a number of different settings, and it's still you doing you. So really great point. I'd like to move back to Ashley and Gustavo for this next question. What do you know now that you wish you had known before you chose your career path?
I put that hindsight is 2020 with this question. I think it's important to reflect on, you know, the things or the mistakes that you may have made, but I also think it's important to make those mistakes and allow yourself to do that. I wish I had allowed myself to make more mistakes. I know one of the panelists said that something to that effect of, you know, I wish I had done this, I wish I had done more of these things. I think it's about taking risks, like audition for the part, even if you don't think you're going to get it. You know, interview for the job, even if you know, under the qualifications, you don't fit all of those qualifications. It doesn't mean you won't get the job. I mean, people are willing to train you if I feel like if you're rigorous enough. So I think it's about taking risks and also not allowing people to dictate what you can do, even yourself, because I think we doubt ourselves because as artists, I feel like we want to be perfectionists a lot of the time. And I think allowing yourself to take those risks and not allow that, you know, saboteur to kind of tell you you shouldn't or you can't, you can always take the risk, you know, the worst that's going to happen is no, which it would have been anyway if you hadn't tried. So, you know.
Thank you. And along those same lines, when I got my first professional job at 26, my boss hired me without my having really anything professional, just a whole bunch of paraprofessional things. And he said to me, someone took a chance on me when I was 27, and that's why I'm going to hire you. And I thought, oh, I remember when he said that, people who hire are human. They have their stories that may guide how they perform, how they act when they're doing the hiring or the casting, whatever your field is. So that's a really good point. They're real people on the other end, and they may very well want to give you a chance. And Gustavo, what do you know now that you wish you had known before you chose your career path?
I guess one of the biggest things would be that it takes time. You really have to be willing and able to put in the time and effort that goes with it. Building the career, it's not just like a, hey, I'm going to show up for this one thing and then boom, I'm all over the place sort of thing. You have to take time to build meaningful relationships. You have to take the time to build meaningful skills. And it's been touched on like throughout this entire panel this whole time of like just jumping on opportunities, digging into things that aren't
underneath it, and then that's where it is.
digging into things that aren't necessarily
Yeah.
what you would presume you'd be capable of doing, sort of thing. So just willing to submit to the amount of time it takes to make something beautiful, you know, to build a career like that.
That's right. That's right. Thank you. And yes, it was Rochelle who earlier said, have conversations with professionals early on. One of the best tools for that, some of you may have taken advantage of, is doing career informational interviews with professionals. And, you know, there are tons of questions you can ask. Usually in about a half hour, 45 minutes, you can get through maybe 5 or 6 questions about them and their take on the field and their own experiences. And typically, the folks are so gracious, just like you have been gracious about being here to share your expertise with all of us now. And so definitely, and PVCC has a job shadow program, as Mr. McCrudden has reminded me. So do take advantage, and I say that to the listeners now, of with any opportunity to talk to pros. We're going to move over to Nicole and Rochelle with this next question. What was your biggest challenge in your educational journey, and what did you do to overcome it?
My biggest challenge has definitely been overcoming my own anxieties about just talking to people or, you know, putting myself out there. I'm a very shy person naturally, so it's been difficult kind of training myself to be able to even just do these kinds of things. But I think, like anything, it just takes practice, and the more you practice, you know, the easier things get. And I think that kind of learning that I do have to give myself that grace and allow myself to take my time and figure out how to put myself out there and deal with the fear that comes with that has been extremely beneficial to me throughout all of everything I've done.
Great, thank you. I'm sure many people can relate to that, having that self-consciousness or anxieties, and that phrase, give yourself grace. That sounds like something that ought to be framed and put right in front of your workspace too. Rochelle, what was your biggest challenge in your educational journey, and what did you do to overcome it?
One of my biggest challenges is that I have dyslexia and ADHD. So I have the reading comprehension of a 7th grader, even though like I have a larger like knowledge base. Like my brain, I look at a piece of paper and all the letters are like woohoo, and they're having a party. And so like so something that I did was really helpful was the Disability Resource Center at PVCC and also at ASU. And so like utilizing those resources, like knowing, yep, those are the resources that are there to support you, and they supported me. And then the thing that it did that was kind of surprising is that when you have academic accommodations, you have to go and talk to your professors about them. So on day one, I was talking to my professors, and that turned out to be something that was incredibly helpful. That after day one, I was going and talked to them. I introduced myself. They knew who I was. And then that's something that I continued, that like I keep my professors up to date on like what I was doing. Like I'm an artist. And so like with some of my professors, if I had an audition come up, they already knew who I was, and they also knew that like I got my work done, and I was there, I showed up. And so if I was like, hey, I got this audition, can I go? They'd be like, yeah, go for it, because they already knew who I was. So that I think sometimes like our weaknesses can turn into our strengths, or our weaknesses in some area may turn into our strengths in other areas that support you along your way. So like if you got something and you're like, wow, this is like a weakness that I have, like don't be discouraged, and don't like there's a lot of different possibilities and ways that can manifest and turn into opportunities.
Thank you. And there is also that human element, right? You let your professors know who you are, and all of a sudden now you're not a number and they're not a number. They're real people connecting and wanting you to succeed. And so, yeah, you put yourself out there, and it might have been scary initially, but then you got used to doing that.
Absolutely.
So thank you. All right, we have another set of questions. We're going to go back to Ashley and Gustavo for this one. How have your experiences at PVCC either directly or indirectly impacted the work that you do?
Is it my turn to go first? One of the specific things that I took with me from Paradise Valley was, I guess, Rochelle had earlier mentioned that she was a fight choreographer, which I also took some of the fight choreography classes that were available, and they were really great, really interesting, and awesome stuff to work on. And these days, when working with companies, when I'm in shows that have like fights in them, I actually get hired on as a fight captain. So I'm not like coordinating the fights or anything, but they say, hey, when the coordinator's not here, you get to like watch to make sure things are on point and that things are still going smoothly. And you can like write down notes and stuff that you can bring up with the choreographer and stuff like that. So that's one of the specific things that I didn't think would come as handy as it did. I was like, oh, this will be a fun class. And now I'm like watching people throw swords around at each other and like making sure that it's in a safe manner.
That's great. You're the first aid guy too, then. Thank you. Thank you. Ashley, what about you? How have your experiences at PVCC either directly or indirectly impacted the work you do?
Excuse me. I actually feel like the mentorship was one of the biggest impacts in my career. I worked with Sonia Valle very closely when I was in my undergrad, and I just feel like she wasn't the only one. She's the one that stands out to me because I worked with her the most. But she just went above and beyond. When I was there in the program, she worked with me on my skills, my technique, my choreography, all of the things that you think of when you think of a dancer. But when it came time for me to transfer as, an undergrad to ASU, she not only connected me with another student who had walked the same path from PVCC to ASU, where I was able to meet with her and kind of talk through, my worries, my concerns. How do I do this? How do I do that? But she also connected me with a graduate student that was currently at ASU, and she was teaching, I think, part-time or just subbing for the dance program. And she critiqued my solo to audition into the ASU program. She actually ended up putting me in her MFA project, which was really cool as an undergrad. And actually, I'm still really, really good friends with her to this day. So I feel like one thing that maybe the bigger colleges don't have that the community colleges do is that person to person connection, like the professor to student connection. And I I have students that I encourage to do that as well, where they, go to the community colleges, get your feet wet, and then transfer to a big university if that's what you want to do. But it was invaluable to go to a community college first and really feel like you weren't a number. And then you kind of knew, like Rochelle said, how to make those connections with professors in the future, especially in whatever major you decide to do. So it's a skill set that's learned at the community college that I wouldn't have had if I hadn't gone.
And what's cool about that is now you're doing it for your students. And I think that I have seen that happen, right? So the younger professionals get into a teaching role, and then they are able, whether it's a formal teaching role or whether it's an informal one, but now they know how great it feels to be the mentee, and they become the mentors, which is just an awesome experience all the way around, that ripple effect. Here's our last prepared question, and this one is for Nicole and Rochelle. While you were a student, were there any internships, job shadowing, volunteering, or work experience that helped you gain employment after graduation?
Through the generosity of Andrea Robertson, who I saw is on the call now, while I was at Pvcc, she offered me to be like her teaching assistant for the stage combat classes, and gave me opportunities to teach and to learn directly with her. And then also she let me shadow when she would go do fight choreography for like Arizona Opera or other companies around the Valley. And so having that ability to go and watch her interact with directors, the questions that she asks. And then also she taught in the high schools. She would do like stage combat workshops and bring me along to those as well. And so that's like a volunteer thing. I would just volunteer my time to go and to co-teach or help support teach those workshops. And then those is where I met a lot of like the PVUSD high school teachers, the Paradise Valley Unified School District. So like going into the job position I have now, I already knew all of the high school teachers in the district who teach theater. And having that kind of connection was really important.
Thank you. And you hear a lot of times people say, well, ultimately, I mean, if they're cynical, which is nobody on this call, by the way, but you'll hear people say, well, it's not what you know, it's who you know. My answer to that, and I think your answer to that would be, great, know more people. Get to know more people. If that is in fact true, that networking does lead to opportunities, then network. And if you don't know how, you practice in small doses and you go visit the Career Center or one of the career counselors. Were you going to add something there?
Yeah, I'll just add one little thing. It's also like there's a lot of value in relationships. Like Gustavo and I, we were freshmen together at Pvcc, and we're still super tight friends. And so even having like peer relationships are really wonderful, because those are the people who you can be like, I didn't get the gig. And they're like, it's okay, let's go eat dinner together. And having like those people, sometimes creative careers can be really isolating, and there may be times of like solitude or aloneness that you need as an artist. But having like a really like core group of people who like will be honest with you and support you is also really important.
Thank you. Okay. And then we have Nicole to answer the same question. While you were a student, were there any internships, job shadowing, volunteer, or work experience that helped you gain employment after graduation?
So I feel like even just going to class has offered me so much experience for what I'm doing now. I mean, I've gotten experience working with literary magazines through school, and then through my professor at Pvcc. I've gotten experience doing the reading for writing competitions. But more than anything, just going to class and getting the experience that I've been able to have through workshops and through talking with peers and bettering myself through their advice and, through my professor's advice It's made my writing better, and it's given me a lot more experience that I need to work within editing or through working with publishing in the future and the past.
Great. Thank you, Nicole. I understand that Gustavo is going to need to leave, correct? Is there anything you would like to add, Gustavo, before you go? And before, also, I want to just tell you how valuable your insights and your comments and encouragement have been. But if you have anything you'd like to say before you leave, we'd love to hear from you.
Well, first off, well, thank you all for having me. And I guess always move in kindness, you know? Sometimes the business can be very cliquey in the arts community. I don't know why, I never understood it. So just always make sure that you're kind and good to the people around you. It's beneficial not only from a career's perspective, but as a human being working in a human being kind of business. So I guess I'll drop that there.
That is a beautiful piece of parting advice for all of us. We all need to hear it all the time. So thank you. And we wish you continued success and hope to see you again at one of our upcoming events.
Look forward to it. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Bye,
Gus.
everyone.
Bye now. And we have had an opportunity to hear from all the panelists on all the prepared questions. I'm sure that many of you have some questions in mind. So this would be a really great time for you guys to type in your questions in the chat. And I actually would like to get started. I prepared a few, and I bet Cecile and others on the call may also have some questions. I wonder if anybody here of our panelists could talk about either professional organizations or conferences that you have found particularly helpful to be a part of.
Yes, I really enjoy being a part of NDEO, the Arizona chapter. So it's the National Dance Education Organization. I feel like professional development through that platform is really valuable. So if you're a dance teacher, you really need to consider being a part of it. They have professional development opportunities throughout the year, such as the Pink Tutu Flu, which is usually in February. There's also some sort of summit early in the fall that I found really valuable, because general professional development is great, but it's also really great to be able to participate in something that's content based. They also do have a lot of opportunities for students to, do performances and adjudicate, which I feel like is very important as a young artist. Start early. So.
Great, that's great. Thank you. Other professional groups, professional organizations, conferences that you've attended or recommend or wish you had attended?
It's very, very niche, but if you do stage combat, the Society of American Fight Directors is awesome. They have like their Fight Master publication that goes out. That's really helpful. And then just as like, if you're looking for work, Durant Auditions is really nice. It's a free source that like promotes everything that's going on in the Valley. And then the other one is if you're specifically interested in doing like voice work, or you teach voice, or interested in developing voice as an artist, Vasta International is a really wonderful organization, and it is international, so you get a global perspective of what is cutting edge in the voice and performance and the teaching of voice in the industry.
Great, thank you, Rochelle. Anybody else want to address the?
I'll say at ASU, they have the Desert Nights Rising Stars Conference, which I was able to go through a scholarship at Pvcc a few years ago. That was very helpful for me. They have major resources in terms of any kind of writing. They have nonfiction, travel writing, fiction, poetry, playwriting, and screenwriting. People come to talk, and they even have literary agents. They have anyone you could possibly imagine there, and it's a great place to network and to be exposed to other writers writing right now.
Fantastic. Wonderful advice. Have any of you panelists, you three panelists, presented either at a poster session at a conference or a workshop at a conference, either as a university student, community college student, or as a professional?
When I was at ASU, I performed for the VASTA International Conference. So that was in Singapore at the time. Again, like when doors open, walk through them. So that was really cool. And again, it like expanded when you have an opportunity to perform at conferences or present at conferences. It is really a way to meet people and also to be exposed to what other people are doing. Like there's like, I mean, theater is amazing. All the arts are amazing. And what people are doing with it, so incredible. So like going to a conference to see like, oh, I'm passionate about this thing. What's this other person doing about it or doing with it or, you know, exploring in it is also really, really cool.
Great, great. Thank you. That actually leads me to a question I had about travel. What travel opportunities have any of you been able to take advantage of? Rochelle, of course, just mentioned one. And how did you decide whether to pursue them if you did travel?
Actually, I was a part of the Phi Theta Kappa chapter when I was at Pvcc, and I got to go to the conference that was in Nashville, Tennessee, and that was the first time that I'd really traveled outside of the state for something education related, and it was great to be a part of it. I think it was really inspiring because it was the next level of human, the people that were participating in that conference, and I feel it was inspiring and it was also challenging because it made you want to be better at whatever you were doing because they had so many fantastic presenters, people with really great speeches. I remember the keynote speaker. I want to say she was in charge of the Phi Theta Kappa chapter at one of the colleges in Tennessee. And she had this really, really adorable speech about how, you know, everyone in the South, don't worry if you're new to the South because there's a lot of people called honey, you know, those kinds of like terminologies. I mean, I remember that speech to this day and how it was not only informational, but it was also quirky and fun and it engaged you. I think engagement, especially with students and humans in general nowadays, is really, really important. So,
And the excitement of being among like-minded people, that is so energizing. Jack, thank you for reminding me of my earlier question, which I did promptly forget. What has been the biggest surprise in your career? Anybody?
I think being able to find, you know, so many different kinds of jobs from one degree. I think once again that diversification was really surprising for me. Being able to have a job where you get to do what you love every day. I think, you know, being an educator is, you know, it can be hard at times. I know everyone can speak for that, but I think when you see even one student where they say, "Oh my gosh, I got it," or you know, I'm Miss D. I totally nailed that when I, you know, did my performance, or like I've never experienced a performance before. This was my first time, and I want to keep doing it forever and ever. And you know, it happened to you as a student, like you were inspired, and then to turn around and be the inspiration, I think is kind of the moment where you're like, I made it. You know, I did the thing that I was, you know, I didn't even realize I was wanting to do. Being inspired and then inspiring others.
Thank you, thank you. Anybody else, Nicole or Rochelle, want to address that question?
I'll say that I never expected that writing would give me such fulfillment in terms of social aspects of my life. I never thought that writing was something that I would find more fulfillment in through sharing and through the collaboration that I spoke on earlier. I really thought that it was just something that I would do on my own, but in reality, it's so much more fulfilling and it's so much easier to grow when I'm surrounded by other writers and I'm able to share my work and read other people's work and have a community of people who are passionate about the same things as I am.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I always like young artist. It's always been like part of my work as an artist to support young artists. And now finding myself in a position like where I do that every day. I think something that surprised me was what happens as an educator when I step out of the way and let my students experience the fullness of the art in their own ways, and to just like really facilitate a space where my light is auto. So like if I'm not moving in my classroom, it turns off. So I'm just gonna do it there.
I thought that was a metaphor, but you
exactly. That was what's surprising. You never know what's gonna happen in your environment. But like what's come out of this year is my classroom. I have a bunch of puppets. I'll go like this so you can see them. So we have like all these puppets over here. And with the pandemic, our students came back with a lot of trauma. This is our first full year back in person with them. And we did a puppetry, like a puppetry unit. And my students kind of like formed connections to the puppets and they named them. And sometimes they come in and they've had terrible days and they have like, they'll have a breakdown or they are having an experience of an extreme emotion. And I'm just like, okay, go get your puppet. And they'll walk over and they get like the puppet that they really like. And we'll do mindfulness around it. We'll talk about like the texture of the puppet's fur. And then all of a sudden, you know, they're able to regulate and they're back in the room and they're back in safety. And I think that that's been something that I didn't, like I knew theater as an art form had the capacity to have that kind of like human connection, but getting to see it in such a real way in the lives of my students has been a really remarkable experience.
Great, thank you. Another question that has crossed my mind as you all were talking was this: through the arts and through studying the arts, you have developed skills that don't directly relate to the arts. Thinking skills, communicating skills, ways of seeing the world. Can any of you talk about that sort of any aha where you realize, wow, just studying the arts has made me more fill in the blank?
I'll talk a little bit about how writing has helped me really practice with empathy. Just being able to step into the shoes of others, and I mean, even in workshop, being able to offer people heartfelt critiques that aren't out of a place of jealousy or meanness, out of a place that you purely just want to help them get to where they want to be. All of it has really helped me practice extending empathy towards everyone and extending patience towards everyone, because we're all on our journeys and it's difficult sometimes. So it really helps to have people who are on your side regardless of what you're going through or what's going on outside of yourself.
Empathy. Thank you. Do you guys want to talk about the skills that you've developed through?
I think leadership is really important. I think that's one of the skills.
They're asking if you
Especially as a female, speaking it from a female's voice, I think it was really important for me to learn those leadership skills and be able to be in charge of a program because it comes with so many responsibilities, which once again creates empathy because you've seen a program director, but you've never really seen all of the things that they do behind the scenes. Public speaking goes along with leadership, having to make announcements before every dance concert to a bunch of parents and professionals and colleagues, having to organize various, events is all part of leadership skills. And it was something experiential that I don't feel like I would have learned without, kind of being pushed into it, being pushed into that role. So.
Great, thank you. Great points.
Kind of bouncing off of what Ashley said earlier, tech theater is surprisingly useful in the house. I mean, it's kind of like a simple thing, but like knowing how to use power tools, or like painting techniques, or like how to practically build something, use that a lot. And also use it in my classroom every day. Like I know how to safely climb ladders, and I teach that to, it's these kind of like safety things. And like also, the other thing with theater is like having an awareness. I think everybody's touched on empathy, but having the ability to take the perspective of someone else. So not only to empathize, but also to understand a perspective that's not your own. And to see like, oh, where's that person coming from? And to have an understanding of that's very helpful.
Thank you. Thank you. Great points. I have another question that's popped into my mind for all three of you. What are your dreams?
Do you mean as far as the arts are concerned? Do you mean like
Yeah, your
more
professional dream. Do you have a professional dream?
I think I want to be able to dance until I'm 80 or 90 like Merce Cunningham. I think that's one of my dreams, is to be one of those people that you see that's moving into their hundreds, right? And they're still killing it. I think that's one of my dreams, for sure. And to still, I think, to never stop learning. I think when you're a child, you think you get to be an adult that's like, which is funny. You're 30 and that's all the learning you need to do. The rest is just, everything by then, right? But being 35, almost 36, it's like makes me want to laugh to think that I used to think that. I think never being stagnant is important. I think that's one of my dreams.
Great, thank you. Nicole or Rochelle?
My dream is just to be able to write everything that I want to write. I mean, I have so many things just going around my head, but it takes time and it takes patience to actually sit down and get it all out and edit it and get it to where I want it to be. I just hope that I'll be able to get everything out onto paper someday.
Thank you.
Yeah, my dream, I think there's a really exciting change in the industry right now, especially in like theater and film, where there used to be a mentality of really using people or using artists, but there's a shift now in really looking at caring for people, and holistically approaching our crafts, where we are paying artists, where we're respecting artists, respecting diversity in workspaces. And so something that like, I hope for like the future of my industry and for the students who I'm teaching now who are growing up into it, that they are able to have careers where their bodies are respected, their emotions are respected, and their identities are respected. And I think that's one of my dreams, is to see that, to continue that shift in what we're experiencing.
And help make that happen.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. And that was actually another question I was going to ask you guys, is what current trends or changes are you noticing in your field?
I think a big one right now in theater is intimacy choreography. That's something that has shifted, especially with the Me Too movement. So just like fight choreography, how that should be safe for actors. Same too if you have any kind of intimacy, which for some people includes like a hug. Before you might have a director that is just like, just do it. You know, I've been in those kinds of situations where a director was like, yeah, you know, just kiss. Whereas now there's actually, again, that respect for actors and even actors' backstories, right? And to say like, okay, you know, like some people call them fences. Where are your fences? Where do you not want to, you know, where's like your no, where you don't want to be touched at all? And there's like all of that kind of intimacy now is moving towards where that's choreographed. So it's safe for the actor and it's the same every night. So because it's choreographed and because there's kind of that accountability, for actors also in the industry, then we're seeing more movement towards the safety of actors' bodies through intimacy choreography, which is awesome.
Great, thank you, Rochelle. Any other responses to that question about current changes or trends in your field?
I think respecting a dancer's body and capability has become a really important priority, and I appreciate that. Coming from having been trained where it wasn't necessarily anyone's fault, it was just a lack of understanding of somatics. I feel like so many different types of somatic yoga practices are becoming a part of being a dance artist. And, everybody's body is different. I think there used to be, especially in the ballet field, there was this expectation of how a body should move, what it should look like. And now there's a lot more of that respect and body positivity because all of us are built differently. And, I think that respecting someone for the type of body they are in at the moment is really empowering, especially when, you don't belong to those, rigid expectations that maybe come along with being a dance artist. So that's something that I'm excited about, body positivity.
Great, thank you. Nicole, is there anything you want to add to that question about trends?
I've just been seeing more opportunities for everyone recently. A lot of the work that goes into writing is submitting to literary magazines, and I feel that there's a lot more space for everyone's voice now within that area. But that being said, I do think that there's a lot of work to be done still in the kind of higher areas of publishing and even academics. There's a lot to be done still.
Great, thank you. Jack, great question. How do you manage, and I'm not going to ask Jack, Jack is asking the question here. How do you manage your work-life balance, panelists?
Learn to say no to some things, I think is important. I'm still not good at that, unfortunately. But I think being organized is really important. Like, have a planner, whether it be digital. I'm a paper girl. I like to be able to write it down. But like prioritize. I think that's like such a stereotype, but you know, make sure that you give yourself space to and permission to do what you love and make that a priority. Make you a priority, even if you do have children. Like I have children and I love them dearly, but I know that I also need to be a full human in order to be a good human for them. So prioritize, organize, and make yourself, important would be my suggestion.
Thank you.
Yeah, going after that, like having a structure is really helpful. Having routines can be really helpful too. So it's like I know the less decisions you have to make, the easier it is to do things. So like having just some like habits that are in place that it's just like, this is my morning routine. This is my routine when I get home from work. So having that. And then also I found like having a transition from when I like leave work and go home has been so important. Like, so I just don't like go home and collapse on the floor, but that I have something that's like, okay, I'm letting this work self go now, and I'm moving into this other part of my life. So having like rituals around transitions has been something that's been really helpful.
Great advice, yeah.
For me, it's just making sure that I give myself time to devote to purely just writing. I think it's difficult to work and then have enough energy to go and work on something that takes a lot of mental energy to do. But to me, like that's what I find most important is my writing. So just giving myself the time and also forgiving myself if I can't always give all of myself to my writing.
Nice. Thank you. I think we have maybe time for one short question before I pitch this back to Cecile. Anybody else have a question? Was there a moment where you felt like giving up but didn't? Did anyone or anything inspire you to continue on?
I mean, I almost every day I feel like giving up sometimes. But I think the thing that's helped me most is knowing that there are people who believe in me. My professors who have supported me in the past have honestly given me so much inspiration to keep going on and to have the power to believe in myself also. It's it's just they've been extremely helpful, and I think leaning on those people and going to them for advice, and if someone is there for you who believes in you and is there for you to reach out to, I would say reach out to them and talk about how you're feeling, and because everyone feels like that sometime.
Thank you, Nicole. Ashley or Rochelle?
You can go, Rochelle. You look like you're burning. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just have some, I think I was recently reading Atlas of the Heart by Brene Brown, and she talks about how hopelessness is an emotion, and we can't always control our emotions, right? Emotions are things that happen. They're a response that is going off in the body. It's part of our nervous system. It's our survival mechanisms. So we can't always control our emotions, but hope is a skill. And we do have the capacity to practice skills. And so I think something, just like Ashley said, like sometimes like every day there can be like those periods of time too, where every day it's like, oh, I got to drag myself into the room. That's how it's, I'm going in, army crawling. Sometimes it's like that. And just to know that, like, again, to have like those practices and those rituals to go back to, like having a gratitude practice and being like, okay, today it just has to be one small thing. So like the other day I was just having the worst day ever, and my student comes up to me and goes, "Miss Dart, I have discovered the meaning of life." And I was like, amazing. What is it? And he goes, that you will make mistakes, but you have the capacity to change. And then he just like left, and I was like, what? That's amazing. And just like, that was like my little gratitude for that day, is to be like, yeah, so inspired by this like young person's wisdom that they're like, oh, I figured it all out. And to just like let that, fuel me and take me into the next day.
Great. Thank you.
I think also an important part of, I mean, maybe it's time to give up on one thing and go to another thing. I think it takes bravery to pivot. Like I'm pivoting right now. I'm transitioning from being a high school teacher into being a college professor. And it's great. I needed a new challenge. I needed a different set of students, different set of minds. And, the high schoolers, all students have value, and they all have different strengths and weaknesses, for example. But I think, giving up is a harsh word. I think knowing when to, change and when to pivot is also acceptable. If you feel like this isn't your end, great. You have to reflect on that. But if it's like, you know what, this no longer serves space for me, I need to change in order to be happy again. I think that's acceptable too. And I maybe giving up is the way sometimes. It just depends on the situation.
It's really wise, and I completely agree with you on that. I'd like to, again, I want to thank Cecile for the opportunity and Dr. Cinto for the opportunity to be here today. I'm going to turn this back to you, Cecile. I know you have some final comments.
Yes, thank you, Marianne. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to our wonderful panelists. This opportunity for you to share your words of wisdom and your insight is just invaluable. And I know that every time I attend one of these panels, I walk away feeling uplifted and inspired. So I want to say thank you for that. Thank you to everyone who helped to put this opportunity together for our students. You may have noticed that myself and Becky were looking down a bit. We were taking notes because we know that some students will watch the recording when we make it available tomorrow, and other students might prefer to have the written word. Nicole, so we want to capture everything in as many different formats as possible. So that was kind of an explanation of what I was doing in between, and really appreciate your giving of your time and your talent this evening. And with that in mind, I also want to thank Marianne for serving as our panel facilitator. And of course, John and I worked together to coordinate these panels for each of the FOIs over the course of the academic year. So thank you. Have a good evening. And I will be sharing this chat. I also will be sending out a survey both to the attendees as well as the panelists. 2 different types of surveys, very brief, but I really would welcome your feedback because we are interested in how we are doing with this sort of learning opportunity, and we always want to make it more as beneficial as possible for our students as well as our panel participants. So thank you and have a great evening.
Thank you. Bye now.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you for participating.
Thank you.
Hi, Rochelle. So nice to see you. Someday I want to learn about how you made the leap of faith to pursue an international experience, because that takes a little bit additional amount of courage and that sort of thing. So sometime we're going to have to get together and talk about that.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for the invitation to participate in this panel. It was such an inspiring to get to hear everybody's perspectives and everything. It was awesome.
Well, good. I always am hopeful that you as panelists will enjoy and benefit from what your co-panelists have to share. So
Yeah.
good deal.
Well,
All right. Have a great evening. Bye.
Evening. Bye.